Hello guys and welcome to Imperator Rome. Today we're going to be talking about Naval Warfare. This is a war guide about the Navy. I've already made guides on amphibious invasions and just a war guide in general, which to be honest covers all of this, yet I keep getting asked for this for some reason. So here we are, let's do it. Let's review what we know, right? So to start, war. Navally, specifically, we're going to cut out the politics for the most part, except unique things, and just get right into the meat. So here we have a navy. Just like any other army in the game, you can assign a commander by clicking this little button and picking a commander from the list of available commanders. These are your characters that are at least adult age and do not have some form of job. You want, generally, if you want the best performing navy possible, the highest martial skill on whatever admiral you assign. So this guy right here is the highest, but of course remember, these are also important for your armies, they're also important for your research, so we're not caring about that right now, we're just going to pick him. But there are also traits that will fill up here that may give you some bonuses or even debuffs towards the viability of an admiral. Now, we have our little Navy screen right here. These are Navy's stats, attributes, things like that. We can see it all right here. We got our subunits. These are just each individual ship that's part of it. These are the different ships that are a part of it. These are the two light ships. These are the two medium ships. There's heavy ships as well. They're not available to everybody in the game, but they exist. They are available via unlocking them in traditions. However, you can technically get access to like every single tradition if you're taking relevant cultures and turning them into integrated cultures. I go over that a lot in my culture guide if you want to know more. Speaking of this military screen, there isn't anything on here specifically for the Navy, but you can still see all of your navies in the outliner. Additionally, if you go to mercenaries, there's actually a naval tab, funny, because it's not one under military, where you can hire pirate fleets to serve as your navy. They typically come with the worst possible ships, but you'll either fight them out in the world as they're originating from infested locations, let's say like this right here, a pirate haven. They return to port here after going out on raids, including raids of you, which you can prevent by setting a fortress at whatever port they would be going after. It's a good advice to only build ports that you will fortify, because that'll protect them from pirates without you needing to go wipe them out. But you can also just, coexist with pirates and hire them to serve your purpose navally. And those light ships do have a purpose, because to recap what we talked about in the amphibious invasions guide, every one of these ships, every cohort of ships, every singular number, every 1, 2, 3 will be equal to one land cohort being able to be on this fleet to be transported. Okay, so I've raised a levy to show you how this works. So if I wanted to board onto this fleet, it's as simple as clicking our units and hitting embark army. Now we are embarked. If I go sailing, they will come with me. But we can also disembark. And you see how the land unit can right click to move around like this? Well, if this navy is not in port, but is instead out at sea in a neighboring location, I can just right click on that neighboring location and we will go board the ships from the shore. As I said, 1-to-1 ratio. So ignore this number here for land units. These are the cohorts. Every one of these is one of these numbers. So 20 Liburnians would equal 20 of these. The size of the ship, the class of the ship does not matter. The only thing that matters here is that the Liburnians move faster than any other ships, making them great for transport. However, as you could see in all of this information versus this information, Liburnians suck fighting everybody else. As a result, if your Liburnians get attacked by another fleet, you might be in a bad situation because they might lose that fight. So it's up to you on whether or not you wish to have an escorted fleet moving slower or a simple Liburnian fleet transporting at the speed of light. If you go with the latter, I would suggest some micromanagement for sure. In the meantime, let's go over all the other information here, the war aspect of it. So we have here the current morale. The higher this morale, the better, because when morale hits 0, you have officially lost a fight. That is how fights work in this game. You either kill everybody, which is less common, or you wipe out the enemy's morale. Additionally, in naval fights, this doesn't happen in land fights, you can capture enemy ships while you're fighting, and this exchange will actually happen quite frequently. Looking up at the top, we have the chance of cohort loyalty. Basically, the longer you have someone in charge here, the more cohorts will become loyal to him. This means you'll pay less for those units because he'll be paying for some of their wages. However, loyal cohorts to a general or an admiral will increase their political influence, which will grant them power in your nation. If the person becomes too powerful, then he will try to perform a civil war because his happiness under your rule will go down. His loyalty to you will go down. So be careful. This is his loyalty to you. This is the power base. This will go up the more loyal units he has. And just by being in command, you see he has commanded ships and admiral, giving him all of his power base. Now start adding loyalty to that, and you might give yourself your own enemy. You might literally make your own demon. So be wary of that. Be very wary who you make an admiral. Enslavement efficiency is literally how well do you take slaves when you are occupying territories, which does not matter as much for ships. Then we have the attrition in the current zone and the information on what would affect that. Weight versus in territory doesn't matter very much for ships, but supply limit, basically where you are matters the most for ships because you have kind of a supply range where you can reach. You could see the green number next to naval distance on my little tooltip where I'm hovering, but if we get far enough away, it'll turn red, not within naval range. That's where we will start taking attrition. That is specific to naval units. Then we have the monthly cost that we're paying for the ships, the general, any characters, the strength, the projected strength of the fleet. These are the numbers you see here on the map. This is separate from the cohort numbers. Even though the Navy's numbers actually match and the lands do not, just keep that in mind. Then moving down, we have our commands. Attachments allows other units to attach to it. So basically, I can have one main fleet and then attach some sub-fleets so that I can have other admirals in service and ready to kind of deploy to different jobs at a moment's notice, but I can attach them so I can just give commands to one unit and have the rest follow along for a while. If it is enabled, then others can attach. If it is disabled, they cannot. This is important because if you have two navies with attachment allowed in the same location, then you might attach to the wrong navy. So it's something to keep in mind. Next, we have boarding tactics. Boarding tactics, if enabled, will increase the chance to capture enemy ships. However, you'll be less likely to damage and destroy enemy ships as a result because you're trying to capture them. It's only 10% modifier, but still. Then, on the flip side, ramming tactics. You'll be more likely to deal damage and destroy enemies. Not less likely to capture. Well, less likely from the buffed one, but not less likely from the original value, but instead you will take more damage as well as dealing more damage. Then we have our sub-commands here. So you can create a new unit from the units available in whatever navy that you have selected. You can detach only damaged ships so that you could send them back to port and get them to repair, because you're not going to repair very well at sea. It can happen in some cases, actually, but these are very well supplied in proximal locations, if that makes sense. You can also just split a navy in half. It'll try to split all the units evenly in half if possible. You could disband it and everything in it. So this is if you just wish to get rid of something permanently. This does have a cost associated with it, something to keep in mind, but of course, do you want to keep paying the monthly cost? Then if you have 5 or more heavy ships at 50% health or more, you can actually capture an unfortified port. Basically, remember how I said pirates can raid ports that are unfortified? Well, enemies that actually have access to heavy ships can go and capture that location with the press of a button. Being that heavy ships are so rare and, ports, how important are they really? Any important ones are probably fortified. You can already see here, even in the base, we have fortifications on the important ports, and the ports that are not important, wow, port, Jesus, are the ones that are unfortified. But you can just go and capture these if you have 5 or more heavy ships without really any exchange. This is the button to attach to a unit. This is what you would press if you were trying to attach to someone that has attachment enabled. You can build to Navy. So rather than going, this is how you build ships, by the way. Rather than going to a location with a port, going into tactical, hitting build ships, and then building at this location specifically, or even using the macro builder to build naval ships wherever they are available, you can instead select the Navy and build directly to the Navy. So wherever the ships are available, it will start building there. When done, they will come and merge with the Navy automatically. This could be dangerous if your Navy is out at sea, and there could be potential enemies in between the shipwrights and the Navy itself. You can order a full retreat if you are in combat, which will reduce the army manpower by 39-50%. Basically, you're going to take like half damage. So be very careful when ordering a full retreat. But you could do it in case you're getting your ass beat in a fight. You don't want to let anything else get captured. You'd rather just repair it, because repairing doesn't really cost money per se, versus losing a ship does, because you need to build a new one. Next, if you have at least one heavy ship at 95% health or more, you could do a port raid. This is when there is a fortification where there is a port. If you are besieging that location via a land army, you could use a navy to support it by creating a breach in the siege. This will allow the siege to be more effective and allow you to pull off an assault far, far easier. Then, a port assault. This requires the Mega Polyreme, the heaviest ship that there is. This will reduce a fort level of an enemy port province by 1. So effectively, I can build multiple fortresses in one location, multiple levels of fortifications. I can do that. The higher, the better for the defense. And this is more effective for controlling a province than spreading out forts, because there's a limit to how much fort resource you have in a region. The default is 5. The first one anywhere costs 3. Everyone above that costs 1. So if I do 1 here, that's 6. If I do 3 here, that's 5. You see the difference? Well, you can reduce a level of that, even eliminating it entirely, if you do a port assault. So that's what that is. Next, we have our tactics. Naval tactics are just simply different strategies that will work better or worse based on what types of ships make up the majority of your navy. Based on what ships you bring with your navy, you'll have different percentage values right here. This effectiveness value is a rating of how much of an advantage you can gain, not that you will gain, but that you can gain by selecting this. I say can because you need to use it against naval tactics that you are strong against. So probing attack is only really going to give you bonuses against naval envelopment. Now, some of these do lead to different forms of fighting. For example, frontal assault will lead to more casualties on either side, whereas compared to probing attacks. Other than that, the vast majority of the bonuses comes from if you have won the rock, paper, scissors here. Harassment versus probing versus naval envelopment, for example. If you win that, then your effectiveness rating comes into play and you will get that much of a bonus. Your damage against will be modified by so-and-so with, there are default values as well. If you lose, then you're at the mercy of the other navy's modifiers. Next, we have flank size. This determines the amount of ships that will be placed on each side of the flank here versus the main front. If you've ever played Hearts of Iron 3 and you remember the front line, second line, third line stuff that goes on in that game, then you'll hopefully get an idea here. You have a front line of primary cohorts. This is your front line. Secondary cohorts will reinforce the front line. And then you have your flanking cohorts that will attack even at a distance. These are kind of like ranged attackers, but they're effectiveness depends, right? So the battle size is limited, something to keep in mind. Less problematic in the ocean than it is on land. So the more you assign to the flank, the less are available for the front line, versus the more you get for the front line. Lighter ships are unanimously always better at flanking tactics, because flanking is based off of maneuver. The higher the maneuver, the further a range your flanking ships can attack at. So you see 4, 3, 2, 1 as we're getting higher and higher up the sizes here. So for maximum maneuver, you would always want Liburnians on the flank. However, these other stats do still come into play. So personally, I prefer to use triremes on the flanks, because if they're going up against, well, anything, they're going to be more effective. I think it's worth losing that little bit of maneuver, just because also if they find themselves in the front line, which they can, if the front line is so big that you just have enough lights that they're flooding onto the front lines, triremes are going to do better. That's just a little bit of advice. That is if we're not caring about naval movement speed. But as you can see, that scales as well the higher up that you go. So when selecting your flanking cohorts, choose whatever light unit, ideally, you wish to dedicate to that task. Frontline, primary cohort, you want generally the heaviest possible unit that you can put here. It's a lot simpler than with land units where there's a bunch of different variables. No. The lightest unit you wish to assign between ideally Liburnians or triremes you put on the flank. With primary cohorts, you want the heaviest possible ship that you can put there. If you are running a 2-ship fleet where you just have one for that and then one for the flank and that's it, that is really where it ends. Just have the secondary cohort match the primary one and you're done. But if you're running a 3-ship fleet where you have, for example, a bunch of triremes, a bunch of hexares, and like mega polyremes, then choose the medium one, for example, that would go in the secondary cohorts here, because the idea is you would get those heavy mega polyremes up first, and then you would get the medium ones going in after, so that you don't end up with the medium ones flooding the front line and the mega polyremes being held back, because like elephants, you want your heaviest ships first, because they will inflict the most damage. They will take the most damage. You want them up front, generally speaking, unless you're only bringing them for purposes of like port raids and assaults and you don't want them taking damage and they don't work well with your tactics, in which case, by all means, select them as the secondary cohort and then select whatever else as the primary one. But this is just, general advice. Now, that is already how naval warfare works, basically in its entirety. War will happen when 2 opposing fleets enter the same sea location as each other. To do naval landings, once your units are, let me show you. Once they are, we're going here, yes. Are on their ships, you can simply just right-click any location bordering this sea region, and then they will go land there. That's how a naval landing works, pretty much. It's not much more complicated than that. If you keep a navy next to any enemy location that has a port, you will start kind of passively raiding the port for money. So that's a good thing to do. There's another thing here that's not really showing itself. We don't have it unlocked. And that is a naval raid for like slaves. You can slave raid enemy ports as well. This is an active like sub action, but you do need to unlock it in the traditions as well. This is a good way to play tall and build up a population without actually expanding your territory very much, especially if your enemy has a lot of ports. And then finally, the last bit of advice I want to give you is if you are declaring war, for example, which I need to actually speed up time to properly show you, and you're declaring this war, you have all these different war goals, probably more than this ideally, right? One thing you can do is show naval superiority. This is much different than show superiority, which you don't need to know about here. Naval superiority essentially means that instead of being based on winning battles or taking locations and holding them, you win by winning naval battles or blockading ports. So if your enemy has like a trash tier navy and you have an amazing navy, just do this against that enemy and then let it build up to 100. Since it's show superiority, you're not going to be able to get much. These 2 war goals are severely nerfed in the war negotiations, but very reliably, you can take generally entire, like, navally bordering provinces here, usually in one war. So you can effectively land and get a foothold in a region by simply showing up and blockading a nation that does not have a navy. And how do you see that information? Well, just right click, pull up the diplomacy screen with them, and you see how many ships they have here. So Rome has 10 ships. If I wanted to, I could declare war on Rome right now at the beginning of the game, navally invade them, and then get 100 war score, and then take like this, all of this right here. So I have a foothold, and then go ahead and attack them shortly after that, wiping Rome off the game in the beginning of the game if I wanted to, using my fleet to assist me to do that. That is something that I could potentially do. And that is generally the effective, efficient way about using your navy. I guess also, you know, go to your nation overview. Just remember there are military ideas here that buff navies, like morale of navy right there. That's pretty important. Additionally, in the economy, you could also, when not at war, go with decreased pay to have your navy maintenance cost, which will save you a lot of money in peacetime. However, when you do bring it back up to normal, just note that it will take time to build that back up. So if you are surprise attacked, you might literally get Pearl Harbored. Something to keep in mind. That is it though. That is all I can think of for this guide in this sitting. So if you want to see any more guides on Imperator Rome that I haven't already made, feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this was helpful to you. For now, I'll see you guys on the next one.